welcome to the regional kickoff conversation about ageism in Europe and Central Asia. We have a very distinguished lineup of speakers today. My name is Borka Jeremic. I'm the head of office of UNFPA in Serbia. I will be the master of ceremony for this part of the conversation.
UNFPA в Serbiji i ja budu vesti eti napomena za kolege koji nam se pridružuju putem interneta. Imamo također
national sign language available, and we have interpretation organized to Serbian and Russian languages. Please use at the bottom of your screen the options for translation and interpretation and choose the language you wish to use today. Due to the current pandemic situation, this event is a hybrid one, in the hybrid format. Some of us are privileged to be in this beautiful building in Belgrade, and we have a number of great speakers and participants who are going to join us online thanks to technology. Let us first start with a short video.
So what's this all about?
Cacheta games. I'm too old for this.
You just want me to say what people say about me.
Weird question, I guess.
My teacher says you'll grow out of it. It's just a phase.
It was never a phase. I never grew out of it.
I guess I'm too reckless, I don't know.
People like to talk very loudly to me.
They say I don't think things through.
You're looking still good for your age.
I'll figure it out when I'm older.
You're having a senior moment.
When the focus is on my age,
Life seems to get a little bit harder.
It feels like I'm not given a chance.
I need to keep up.
Or get out of the way.
I lack experience. Or too much experience.
I'm baggage.
Only weighing people down.
Looking at my age like it is a disease. Where I work, no one takes me seriously.
it makes me feel powerless.
And it hurts.
When people see only my age.
Great, we will be discussing these issues later today, and now I have the honor and pleasure to invite Her Excellency Ms. Gordana Čomić, Minister for Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogue of the Republic of Serbia, to offer her welcoming words.
Thank you, and really warmly welcome. Warm welcome to all of you who will be part of the team that will fight for anti-discrimination strategies, policies, and behavior towards all the people all around the planet. I am truly grateful to United Nations Fund, for picking up Belgrade to hold this conference. Belgrade knows how to be a place where history happens, and we do hope that this will be history for good. Why? Because we human beings, we are, and God thanks to that, all created to be different. We are different by sex, we are different by color of our eyes, color of our skin, our religious belief, our ethnicities. Everything in each human being is something to be different from the other human being. And that's the beauty of humankind. Except when you get old. Then you're just old people. And practically anything else that is diversification for you as a human being to anyone else is just that you are old people. It means that we have a kind of island of forgotten human being who've been discriminated only because they are old. And our offer will be clear and short. We ask young generations who differs. Nobody goes around the street and says, oh, look, there's a young people around, or there are middle-aged people crossing the street. But when you see old people, say, oh, there are old people. So we are asking young people and middle-aged people, men and women, to look at old people, and say, this is me, if I'm lucky to get another 30 or 40 years of my life. Because getting old is a privilege, not given to all people. Many of human beings are finishing their life on planet Earth early. And those who get lucky to really get very, very old deserves us to see them, to talk to them, to listen to them with respect and without any kind of discrimination, to address them with our offer to be useful, to be creative, to be of use for us who are coming after them. That's the whole point of human society, where random kindness is not just a matter of policies of human rights, but is a quality of us living together. And that will be our message from Belgrade to all old people. You are not old. You're just here for quite a while. And we do hope that all of us will be here for quite a while. And there is a lot of things that you can do when you are in your 70s or 80s. There is a lot of knowledge and experience that you gathered throughout your life that you can share to the younger generations. There are a lot of richness and wisdom that you can be part of in improving in society life of people who are younger than you, but also improving the quality of your life as it is now. We know that older people are meeting physical disabilities, sometimes mental disabilities, loneliness. They lost a lot of people, their wives, their siblings, and the world that they used to be born in, and the world that they actually built, it disappears in front of their eyes. And there is one simple task for us to address with policies, with random kindness, with human rights policies, to address all the people and says, this is a unique world. We share the world has been, we are part of the world that is now, and we want you, all people, to be part of the world that is yet to come. That's all about humanity that I know growing up with old people who told me growing old is mandatory, but growing up is a kind of a choice. And with that choice, I again thank you for you to be here with us.
Thank you, Excellency, for your inspiring words. And now I would like to give the floor to the UN Resident Coordinator, Madame Françoise Jacob.
Good morning. Madame la Ministre, Gordana Tomic, Excellencies, colleagues from Eastern Europe and Central Asia, I'm happy to be here in Belgrade to support our partners from the Ministry of Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogues, the regional offices of UNFPA and WHO, and in hosting this regional launch of the UN Global Report on Ageism. I would like to acknowledge the work that the government of Serbia is dedicating to the issue of aging and to this regional global call to combat ageism. We have said many times that COVID-19 pandemic has uncovered many structural inequalities and vulnerabilities in our society. It has certainly shone light on issues that have been denied or neglected, such as ageism. And I define this as stereotyping or discrimination against individuals and groups on the basis of their age. Ageism as a social behavior is probably as old as humanity, and it has serious and far-reaching consequences for health, well-being, dignity, and rights. above all for older people, but with negative impacts that extend across all society. And really, COVID has been the crisis that exacerbated against ageist attitude towards both young and old, sometimes pitting generations against each other. We have seen, for example, discrimination when elderly people living in care homes were either abandoned or not protected at all in the first few months of the pandemic. We have heard the rhetoric that all people should stay locked in so that younger generations can be free, which for me meant that the collective responsibility to address the crisis would be shifted mostly to a more vulnerable group rather than embraced by all. Each of us has also seen how our elder parents have been mentally affected by the isolation, a lot more than other groups, partly because they might not have benefited from the explosion of digital services that happened during the crisis. And on this point, I want to highlight that the race for digitalization of our lives have led a majority of elderly far behind. In France, where I'm from, an estimated 17% of the population, mostly older people, has been marginalized in its access to both public and private services because of age-blind digitalization. So ageism in its multiple forms is really an unfortunate cousin of sexism and racism. And predictably, the combination of these three can have very harsh circumstances for certain groups of people, particularly older women. But this period has made us certainly realize that we need to be a lot more proactive, if only because our population, especially in Europe, is getting older, if only because of the multiple challenges that we are facing as a society, such as depopulation and climate change, where we will require greater social cohesion, and if only because intergenerational solidarity is a great expression of love, and we need more love in our lives right now. So in reality, the older population, as the minister has said before, it's an incredibly diverse group, perhaps the most diverse of all age groups. Older people frequently make irreplaceable contributions to their families, their community as workers, caregivers, volunteers, and community leaders. So the report that we present today is the result of joint efforts of several UN agencies, namely UNFPA, UNICE, WHO, OHCHR, the Office of Human Rights, and it clearly shows that understanding and addressing ageism requires a multisectoral approach. So I would like to mention two key instruments that will help us to engage. One is the United Nations Decade of Healthy Aging, which started this year for 10 years until 2030. And this is a global collaboration aligned on the Sustainable Development Goals that brings together government, civil society, international agencies, professionals, academia, media, and the private sector to improve the lives of older people, their families, and the communities in which they live. The second instrument is a new joint program on aging, launched in 2020, implemented by the agencies I mentioned. So UNFPA, WHO, UNICE, Human Rights Office, and Help Age International. The objective of this joint program is to support countries in strengthening the rights and safeguarding dignity of older people through improving health and social care provision and enabling environments. And this is a program that will be implemented across the region. So we know that we need to work on several fronts of action. One, of course, is policy and law, and I believe that in Serbia we're already quite well advanced on this side. Second is the stereotypes and the neglect based on ignorance or prejudice should be addressed through of course, all available means and from an earlier age. For that, we should employ education, intergenerational programs and campaign, intense outreach and communication, interaction between both older and young person, and this will eventually impact the perceptions, the narratives around age, and secure protection and good prevention mechanisms. Third, I believe, and this is also from my personal experience, I believe that a particular focus is needed around health, both physical and mental, to ensure that elderly people have equal rights to good health services, that they are not discarded just because they are old. And I really hope that somehow we can work on the sense of self-value, which so many old people are losing or have lost. And to conclude, I would like to say, of course, aging is a most natural process, but a true measure of civilization is how we treat our old people, ourselves in a few years, with dignity, empathy, and care, so that they enjoy life in the fullest until its end. So at the UN, of course, we are committed to advance this agenda, this particular agenda, through our strategic priorities. And I trust this event today will galvanize our joint action with a sense of urgency. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Françoise, for your nice words, and thank you for all the work you are doing on UN coordination. As you mentioned, the joint program of aging, we would like to mention that this event is organized in the context of this joint program, and in that spirit we are pleased to invite Dr. Hans Kluge, a regional director of the World Health Organization, to address us on behalf of both UNFPA and the World Health Organization. Dr. Kluge.
Thank you. Excellencies, honorable ministers, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. It is really my great pleasure to welcome you today to the regional launch of the first ever UN report on ageism on behalf of the WHO Regional Office for Europe and the United Nations Population Fund. This event is yet another great example of the powerful collaboration between our office and the UNFPA Regional Office for Eastern Europe and Central Asia. My warm thanks to the government of Serbia for their support to this important and timely agenda in our region. My only regret is that I'm not with you physically in Serbia, a country which is very, very close to my heart. Let me take this opportunity to thank Her Excellency, Ms. Gordana Komic, Minister for Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogue of the Republic of Serbia, in particularly for spearheading regional efforts to address ageism. I would also like to extend my warm thanks to Ms. Françoise Jacob, UN Resident Coordinator in Serbia, for her leadership in mobilizing the UN system to support the government of Serbia's COVID-19 response, and more specifically in bringing the impact of the pandemic on older persons to the attention of the UN system. Ageism is everywhere and it is harmful. It exists in our institutions, our relationships, and ourselves. It is so insidious and socially accepted that it is often left unchallenged. And that's why it is so important for us to work together to combat it and change the pervasive narrative about older persons in our societies. This is especially relevant for a region that has the highest median age in the world. The UN report on ageism underlines the serious and wide-ranging consequences it has for people's health, well-being and human rights. Among older people, ageism is associated with poorer physical and mental health, increased social isolation and loneliness, greater financial insecurity, decreased quality of life, and premature death. An estimated 6.3 million cases of depression globally are estimated to be attributable to ageism. A longer life means a larger older population, but it also means that many more older persons will be pushed to the margins if we do not act. Older persons should be recognized as valued members of our societies. They are among our most important partners and resources. Elevating their voices and the voices of those close to them is crucial if we are to create policies that truly leave no one behind. I am very pleased to share that we have also joined forces with the UN Economic Commission for Europe, the OHCHR, and Help Age International for a joint regional program on aging, which seeks to learn from the lessons of COVID-19 and uphold the rights and dignity of older persons through health, social care, and enabling environments in Europe and Central Asia. These goals align with a key objective of the WHO European Programme of Work to promote health and well-being, and its 4 flagship initiatives of mental health, immunization 2030 agenda, behavioral insights, and empowerment through digital health. All of this will be laid out in detail in our roadmap for implementing the Decade of Healthy Aging in Europe, to be published at the end of this year. So what do we need to do to tackle the root causes of ageism? First of all, we need to join hands and acknowledge the breadth and depth of this problem. And the event today is proof of what can and should be done moving forward. Second, we need to work together to promote policies, education activities, and intergenerational interventions that contribute to mutual understanding among different age groups. And thirdly, we need better data. We must insist on the disaggregation of data on older persons and consider different criteria for identifying the needs of older persons, for example, about their functional abilities. And finally, we need to form a coalition to explore these issues in depth and work with governments to build more resilient health and social care systems that are a better fit for aging populations and that provide additional support to those who have been most at risk during the pandemic. Back in February this year, I had the great privilege to speak to Sister André, the oldest person in Europe, who had just turned 100 and 117 years, a few weeks after recovering from COVID-19 herself. And I asked Sister André, what is your advice for old and young people during these difficult times, as many people were isolated in lockdown? The reply of Sister André was, be patient, be kind, and encourage others. These are truly words to live by and underline the value each of us brings to others, regardless of age. I'm so much looking forward to the fruitful discussions of today and wish all of us a productive launch event. Thank you. Hvala vam.
Hvala vama, Dr. Kluge, for your leadership and commitment to combating ageism across Europe. Now we have with us Madame Rada Đurićin, a friend, colleague, and an advocate who helps us promote digital literacy in Serbia. We know that we don't need too many words to explain who Rada is. Rada is a famous actress in Serbia. And with this, I invite Rada to give us a little bit of advice on ageism. Please.
Thank you.
Today, we are talking about ageism, about examples of social inequality of older persons, of which Serbia, there are many. 1 in 5 citizens is over 65 years of age. There are different types of discrimination, but also different types of fight for a more humane society. Today, one of our most important tasks is digital literacy. For the young, this is a simple task. For the older persons, it's more difficult. We can say that it is difficult, and they require assistance. This is how Mixer organization, together with or headed by writer Ivan Lalic, this is what they did. So with the help of UNFPA, they made 3 short films about the use of Facebook, Skype, and Viber on our smartphones, which allow us to have an easier and quicker communication for free. When these short films were made, with the participation of student Nikola Đorđević as the expert for these questions, me as a member of the older generation, and as moral support. If I can do this, then you will be able to do this as well. After these short films were played on TV after the Mixer Festival, it turns out that people feel that this type of assistance should be continued for the older persons, and that we should make a TV show about this. And Ivan Lalic is now writing the script for this future TV show. People often ask me, did you personally experience something that you could describe as discrimination against the older persons? If I remember well, no, but I do know of different cases, and I know how important it is to advocate the elimination of any kind of inequality. Please just compare the position of men and women now and before. However, I do have one personal example of ageism. This summer, before I went to my summer vacation, I went to several agencies that sell health insurance for travels, and I was very shocked to see that the prices for people over 70 were very high. And in one place they even told me that for us who are older than 85 years of age, the insurance, they don't sell the insurance for us. I already thought that I wouldn't even travel, but I was fortunate enough, and ultimately they offered an acceptable price to me, even though it was the highest one. It seems that it is only me who believes in my longevity. Thank you.
Sharing your experiences with us and for working with us. Now I will pass the baton to my colleague and friend, Madame Alana Armitage, Regional Director of the United Nations Population Fund for Eastern Europe and Central Asia, to moderate the panel discussion that will follow. Before that, we will present a short video, which is part of a TikTok campaign, which was made to help changing the narrative on aging and older persons.
Good morning, good afternoon. Good morning, good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Here, I am so happy to be here in Belgrade this morning to moderate this second part of our important regional event on ageism, organized on the eve of the International Day of Older Persons, paying recognition to the key role that older persons have in our societies, as well as recognizing the existing inequalities that older persons face in terms of access to health, employment, and livelihood. But before we move to our distinguished panelists, I would like to express my deep gratitude and appreciation to Her Excellency Ms. Gordana Komic, Minister for Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogue of the Republic of Serbia, for hosting this regional event today and spearheading the protection of the rights and health of older persons to prevent ageism, discrimination, and exclusion. I would also like to express my deep gratitude to Françoise Jacob, UN Resident Coordinator for Serbia, for her leadership in serving the older persons' needs during the COVID-19 pandemic and placing the issue among the key priorities of the UN system here in Serbia. My deep appreciation to our excellent panelists. Rada, such an honor to meet you, and thank you for being with us today. And dear colleagues, thanks to all of you as well. Let me just reinforce what my colleague, the WHO Regional Director, Hans Kluge, just said. Ageism robs millions of people in Europe of opportunities to fulfill their potential. It also prevents countries in the region from dealing with the rapid demographic change that they're undergoing. We simply cannot afford to let age-based discrimination exclude large parts of the population from contributing to public life and the economy. So with us today, and I'm starting to see them now online, with us today we have a very distinguished panel of speakers who will relate to ageism and the different approaches to combat it. They'll be addressing ageism in our societies, which is a critical issue for creating a more equal world in which the dignity and rights of every human being is respected and protected. We have with us, and if we can show them all at once, I think it would be great. Yes, we have everyone here. Dr. Vania de la Fuente Nunez, Technical Officer, Demographic Change and Healthy Aging at WHO. Mr. Yerlan Alkenov, Vice Minister of Labor and Social Protection of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Ms. Nino Lomjadia, Public Defender of Georgia. Mr. Maciej Kucharezik, Secretary General from the Age Platform Europe. Ms. Irina Strajescu, Executive Director, Mold Cell Foundation, and Dr. Claudia Mahler, the UN independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights by older persons. A fantastic panel that we have this morning, and really honored to have all of you with us. Many people are following this event online, so I'd invite you to use the chat function for any comments and questions that you might have for our panelists. Let's start by having a quick look at what ageism is. We've heard a little bit already from the first segment, but Vania, let me welcome you first. Dr. Vania de la Fuente Nunez, originally from Spain, Vania manages the global campaign to combat ageism at WHO and is the lead author of the first UN Global Report on Ageism. My colleagues are displaying Vania's bio in the chat, and we'll do that for everybody. But Vania, let me turn to you. What can you tell us about the main findings of the UN Global Report on Ageism?
Of course. Thank you very much, Alana, for the kind introduction. They say that an image is worth 1,000 words, so please let me share a few slides to present the key findings of the first UN Global Report that we're launching at regional level here today. So hopefully you will be able to see the slides in full screen in a second. Is that on for everyone? Yes. So before I go through these few slides, I would like every person joining us here today to think of any situation in which you or others around you were treated unfairly because of your age. And a few examples have already been given by the opening panel, but I think it's important for each of us to think of those experiences in our personal life. So now that you have some experiences hopefully in mind, let me start the presentation with the definition of ageism. When we talk about ageism, we're really referring to how we think, how we feel, and how we act, both towards other persons, but also towards our own selves. This means on the basis of age. This means that when we talk about ageism, we're really referring to three distinct dimensions: stereotypes, or how we think, prejudice, or how we feel, and discrimination, or how we act. As you see on the bottom of the slide, ageism can affect people of any age, and it can take different forms across the life course. After the small exercise just now, you probably now have a few images in mind in terms of those experiences that you may have had of ageism through your lifetime. You may have been ridiculed or made fun of because of your age, or you may have been denied a job because of your age at a certain point in time, or maybe access to healthcare because of your age, as we heard earlier today. The report found that ageism is everywhere. It is in ourselves, in our relationships, and our institutions, including health and social care systems, legal systems, the workplace, the media, and many more, as you will see in the report. We know that globally, 1 in 2 people are ageist against older people. And if we zoom into Europe specifically, the report shows that 1 in 3 older people report being a target of ageism in this region, and that 1 in 2 younger people report being a target. In this region, at least, ageism has been shown to be more pervasive than sexism and racism. Ageism is not only highly prevalent, but it also has a very negative impact on our health and well-being when we're older, as we heard from Dr. Hans Kluger earlier today. Ageism is associated with an earlier death, as well as poor physical and mental health, including the presence of chronic conditions, acute medical events, depression, and cognitive decline. It further affects our well-being, having an impact on our quality of life, the likelihood of social isolation and loneliness, and it takes a heavy economic toll both on individuals and on society as a whole. Ageism is harmful in itself, but it also exacerbates other forms of disadvantage, making these effects on our health and well-being even worse. But the overarching message of the UN Global Report on Ageism is really optimistic. We can combat ageism. There are 3 strategies that work in reducing or eliminating ageism: policy and law, educational activities, and intergenerational interventions. Policy and law can address discrimination and inequality on the basis of age and protect the human rights of everyone. Importantly, this strategy is effective in addressing ageism against any age group. Educational activities can enhance empathy and dispel misconceptions about aging or different age groups, and reduce prejudice by providing accurate information and counter stereotypical examples. They can be included in all types and levels of education, and in both formal and non-formal education. And last but not least, intergenerational interventions, which basically bring younger and older people to work together on common projects. These can help reduce intergroup prejudice and stereotypes, and they are among the most effective interventions in reducing ageism against older people, and also show promise in their effectiveness in reducing ageism against younger people. Where possible, the report suggests for these 3 interventions to be implemented together to maximize impact. The report concludes with 3 recommendations that we must use to end ageism. The first is to implement and scale the 3 evidence-based interventions that I just mentioned. Second, we need to improve our data and research to gain a much better understanding of ageism and how to reduce it. There are still gaps in this area that we need to cover. And finally, we need to change the existing negative narrative around age and aging to create much more accurate narratives. So to summarize, ageism affects us all. Ageism is everywhere, and it is incredibly harmful to our health, our well-being, and our economies. But ageism can be combated. We're really hoping that you join the movement to create a world for all ages. To this end, we have developed a very rich toolkit that is now available in English, French, Russian, and Spanish, which provides resources to help you continue this conversation with colleagues or employers, with students, with policymakers, with family and friends. It also includes an event guide to help you organize your own events on ageism, infographics, social media assets, and much more to help you reach out beyond your immediate community. The link to this toolkit and other resources of the global campaign will be provided in the chat. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Vania, for this excellent presentation. I think you really summarized well the global report on ageism and also what can be done about the issue. And that's exactly what we're going to hear now from our distinguished panelists. You mentioned that one of the strategies to combat ageism is through government policies and legislation. And we are honored to have with us Mr. Yerlan Alkenov, Vice Minister of Labor and Social Protection of the Republic of Kazakhstan. And I see that the video is now on. Excellency, Vice Minister, Mr. Alkenov has been in this position since September 2019. Before that, he was the Deputy Akim of the city of Almaty and the Deputy Akim of the North Kazakhstan region for the development of entrepreneurship, industry, foreign economic relations, and tourism. Excellency, Mr. Vice Minister, thank you so much for being with us today. Could you tell us about the policy strategies in Kazakhstan that can protect older people from ageism?
Добрый день, уважаемые. Добрый день.
Dear moderators, allow me to greet you and to thank you for the organization of today's event. Since I was the deputy speaker for 4 years, and I also, at that time and later, I was working in the region, working on these issues. And I would like to thank you on behalf of Kazakhstan, the Republic of Kazakhstan, for talking about this topic. I'd like to wish all of the participants a successful meeting and a successful next year. Next year we will be celebrating the anniversary of our independence, and the issue of age and the improvement of quality of life of older persons is one of the priorities of state social policy. Each year our Ministry of Labor, in our briefings, let's say, talks about reports about this topic. So since 2017, Kazakhstan has been, let's say, a country with a huge population, and we have the share of older persons right now has increased by 2% compared to 2 years ago. So we have well-organized social payments, social benefits. Pensions were increased by 5% this year, including other social benefits. So international practice in total, 2.2 million people in our country, our pensioners, are receiving pensions. And next year, our ministry, after the analysis is made, will implement the plan to improve the standard of living for older persons called Active Longevity, which includes 38 manifestations in 20 different directions, where we will be working on providing an increase in dignity, improving the material position of employees, support to families, health protection, social protection, forming conditions for a social approach, organization, increasing social awareness, improvement of the overall position in the pandemic conditions. All of this was approved by the administration of our president, and this was supported by all social organizations, and everybody will be dealing with this. For the organization of this main manifestation, a cross-sectoral committee was formed to develop a special program for improving the position of older persons. We are planning to have 38 or 39 events in all regions of Kazakhstan. So this has started in 10 of the 18 regions of Kazakhstan. In all regions, we will open centers. There is already a center in Kazakhstan. There is a center in Nur-Sultan. We will be opening centers in all of our regions. So the task of these centers is to, let's say, these centers should be socially focused on everybody so that everybody could find their own, let's say, entertainment, friends, ways to spend their free time. Simply in Almaty, in all municipalities, we have similar centers, and people who are older persons go there, and there are fitness rooms there. There are private organizations, sports facilities. Everything is free. They can learn new languages, English and some other languages which are less popular. They acquire digital literacy skills, how to use Facebook, how to use Instagram. So this is what we're working on actively now. Then this paradigm was supported by the ruling party, and in the elections last year, there was a promise to open such centers across the country in 17 different regions. We have also we have introduced the concept where, starting from next February, we will open 17 centers, let's say, medical and social institutions which will provide services. This is something new in our country. This will establish the culture of health and safety and a link with society. We will also introduce Nordic skiing, etc. So we have introduced the concept of social development as well, and in order to implement this, we have adopted a rule book on health, and we are introducing changes. Now we're making changes regarding certain categories. So now we have the experience with employment of older persons, with the continuation of their professional activities, and we believe that this is a motive enough in itself, and it is also an opportunity to gain material benefit. Now we have some statistics to talk about. I think that we have good indicators with my older colleagues, and that we have many associates who are ready to provide assistance and to work with our older persons. Also, we have a relationship with people in the pre-pension age. We are developing productive employment in entrepreneurship. Starting from this year, we call this the Silver Age. And right now, this allows people to work some more, to find new employment before they retire, so their pensions are respectable. We also organize training for older persons and different sorts of education. So our goal is to have a good level of physical, let's say, fitness, health, and healthy aging strategy in Kazakhstan for 2021. So a healthy lifestyle in 2015, there was a plan which was adopted to provide assistance. It's also important to prepare professional staff. So also providing special social services. This year in Kazakhstan, almost 50,000 people, older persons, were encompassed by special programs in rehabilitation centers and at home. Social workers visit people and they provide a complex, different services which provide persons in difficult material circumstances with conditions to overcome their social issues. Sometimes persons living alone cannot do it alone. So this assistance includes the, let's say, provision of medications. Last year we had more than 300 provisions. This was a proposal from the public. We've expanded this circle of people who receive social services. So by Friday last week, this used to be only persons living alone whose relatives don't live in Kazakhstan. But from this Friday, we've introduced also cases of physiological limitations, cases of family conflict, children or parents that aren't taken care of by their children, people, bedridden people, etc. Many people will now be encompassed with these services. So not only people living alone. The care for older persons is being nurtured, as is the connection between families. Ageism is not extremely present in Kazakhstan, but we need to improve our relationship towards older persons. Please allow me also to say that last Thursday, on the meeting of our parliament, we have adopted a law which has introduced the veteran laborers category. These are people who worked for more than 40 years and who had achieved major results. And this is a category which was introduced, this veteran laborer, and this category is closely connected to older persons. This is a revolutionary decree or regulation. We also introduced this longevity program, which is a state program. We have centers all over Kazakhstan, so 10 of them were open. We will open 30 more. And we are introducing these new laws in order to also care for disabled persons. We are also following international practice, the best examples. We will try to continue to improve and to accept the good things that you can offer us, and we will implement this in our country. Thank you.
Deputy Minister, and thank you to the Republic of Kazakhstan for making age and ageism a policy priority. You have given us some very clear examples of that. Of what the Kazakhstan government is doing to promote the health, the rights, and the dignity of older persons. Thank you. There may be some questions for you later on in the panel, but I'd like to move now to our next speaker, Ms. Nino Lomjaria, who is the public defender of Georgia, whom I had the honor to meet when I was in Tbilisi a few weeks ago. Ms. Lomjaria previously served as the first Deputy Auditor General in the State Audit Office of Georgia, and as the Secretary General of the International Election Observer Organization, the European Network of Election Observer Organizations. Ms. Lomjaria, can you tell us what is the role of the public defender in combating ageism and discrimination? Can you give us some examples of what the main challenges are in Georgia? Over to you.
Thank you very much for these questions. Distinguished participants, dear colleagues, it is my great pleasure to have an opportunity to address you today and bring to your attention the challenges faced by older persons in Georgia and give the examples of the work that Public Defender's Office is carrying out in response to age discrimination practices. It's important to recognize that older persons make significant contribution to our society and that we must not limit their potential. Unfortunately, we have a large number of complaints about the age discriminatory vacancy announcements in the public and private sector, which actively contributes to strengthening the stigma against older persons. In response to this practice, the public defender issued recommendation to the Ministry of Labor, Health and Social Affairs of Georgia to develop a mechanism raising awareness among public service employers and also to prepare criteria for vacancy announcements in a way to avoid discriminatory restrictions. The Public Defender of Georgia has also studied and published reports on the compliance of social and healthcare programs with the principle of equality. The study found that when determining the circle of beneficiaries, some programs use discriminatory criteria on the grounds of age or gender. Our office has also issued the recommendation to the relevant agencies to avoid such discriminatory practice. It's also worth mentioning that Public Defender addressed the president of the National Bank of Georgia with a general proposal relating to alleged discrimination on the ground of age in banking sector. The study of the cases made it clear for us that commercial banks operating in Georgia apply age limits beyond which a person is refused to get loan products. In addition, in some cases, age also becomes the basis for limiting the amount of the loan. The public defender, referring to the relevant standards, stressed that the consumer's condition should be assessed individually and decisions should not be based solely on age. And finally, one of the main challenges in Georgia is the lack of visibility about violence against older people. The public defender has been talking about continuous and systemic problem related to the absence of comprehensive statistics, data, as well as adequate response to the cases of abuse and effective oversight system. This was a brief summary of the situation, and I will be pleased to respond to any of your questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for that excellent intervention. And really, as you mentioned, the public defender is the bridge between the government and civil society. It's important because it's a place where older people can go to get information on their rights that they may not otherwise know. I would say that not enough older people actually know about that. So, Nino, I will come back to you with another question later. Your work has been incredibly important, and I congratulate you. Now, let us turn to our civil society representative, who I see with us now, Mr. Maciej Kuczarecek, Secretary General of the Age Platform Europe. Prior to taking over as Secretary General in 2020, Maciej worked at Age Platform Europe on social policy issues such as the adequacy of social protection, minimum income, the promotion of human rights, social justice, and dignity. Maciej, what does Age Platform Europe and its members at country level do to address ageism? And do you have any good examples that you could share with us? The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Alana, for this kind introduction. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, first of all, let me to applaud the government of Serbia for this regional launch of the global report on ageism. Obviously, for us, civil society, this first ever report is a major step forward. Congratulations to the WHO, to all the authors of this report. Actually, it gives, let's say, like a sort of a kickoff. It's an inspiration for worldwide reflection on how to address and combat ageism. At Age Platform Europe, which is a network representing both organizations of older people, but also those working for older people, we find most interesting in this report the latest evidence actually on the nature, the magnitude of ageism. But of course, what we support most of all are these three major types of interventions which are recommended. And what I would like to address in my speech is obviously to show what we as Age Platform here at the European level, but also nationally, what we do to put in practice actually these three major types of intervention. So first of all, as it was identified by the report, policy and laws, these are the first steps to combat ageism. So, for example, what we have been doing over the years is obviously the support for an UN Convention on the Rights of Older People. Here, as Age Platform, earlier this year, we launched a campaign called EU Leads the Rally. This is a campaign to support the adoption of the United Nations, of a UN Convention on the Rights of Older People. And here we are calling actually on EU member states to demonstrate in practice their commitment to human rights. We know perfectly that no international human rights treaty has been adopted without the support of European states. That's why we think that this campaign is really important to give a new dynamic into this discussion. Actually, our members build on this campaign at national level. Also, several of our civil society partners and allies beyond the EU also do so. They are very active in working for an EU convention. This is the case of the Red Cross of Serbia, just to mention one example from our hosting country today. But then to give you another example of what member organizations at the local level can do, I would here mention our member organization in Slovakia. They are actively working on the adoption of a national charter for the protection of older people. They drafted a text of what could become the Slovak Charter for the rights of older persons, and this should be in principle discussed by the national parliament. They also tabled a proposal to install the ombudsman for older people in Slovakia, and again, this is a discussion that they are putting forward in the framework of the national parliament. So as you can see, the space and the importance of the action at the national level supports greatly what we do in our work, in our efforts at the European level, for and also globally for the recognition of human rights and possibly of a UN Convention. Then also what we do is obviously to improve understanding of ageism, its manifestation and how to tackle it. So here we work enormously with other civil society organizations on the intersectionality of age discrimination. So here there is a close cooperation that Age Platform Europe, we are doing with other European networks, for example, the European Disability Forum for the people with disabilities, but also with another European network representing older Roma. So I would say here, this work is also extremely important for our national members because they can replicate this cooperation with other age and population groups. And I would say that in this particular context, this old maxim, one for all for one, takes on its full meaning. Of course, last but not least, we make specific efforts to work with youth organizations to also on how ageism cuts across all age groups and impacts on intergenerational relationships, but also how young and older people can work together. Then moving maybe to the fight of stereotypes. That's part of the work that WHO is doing and what's emphasized in the report. So here, of course, we have our own communication guides. So this is something that we disseminate to show, to explain how we can avoid ageist in the communication. We also, this year, we will be celebrating our 20th anniversary as Age Platform Europe. We, for this occasion, we developed a campaign of photographs across the EU member states using the real examples, just to show the faces of older people from our members from different countries. But to give you another concrete example, Belgium, in the Flemish community. We had, there is an initiative that was launched by the local regional radio, which contacted one of our national members to actually prepare a series of radio programs on age discrimination and specifically ageism. So there were 3 episodes where famous historians, fascinating philosophers, but also therapists, anthropologists, they explored the questions of basically how we can deal with old age or what can be learned from previous generations in order to promote age equality. Maybe if I still have another moment, I would like maybe to mention another area of our action, which is to monitor and report on systematic structural ageism. So here, of course, we as Age, we produce different reports. A couple of years ago, we issued a very comprehensive report position on structural ageism, which was based on views on the input from our members, actually to show how people on the ground experience ageism. We also made a specific effort to show how ageism, what it meant on daily basis during the COVID pandemic, very specific context. It's not necessary to go more into details. We know perfectly what was the impact of this pandemic on older people. But again, here, a local national example, our Irish member organizations, Age and Opportunity, received funding from the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission to host actually the assemblies of older citizens to explore, again, precisely on older people and their experiences during the COVID restrictions, in particular to discuss this policy of cocooning, which was questioned by some people, its effectiveness and so on. So again, something very concrete that can be done at the national level. So maybe the very last example, because we also, of course, as a European network, we raise public awareness. We do this at the European level by cooperating, for example, with national governments in the context of each of the presidencies to the Council of the European Union. We had a very interesting conference last year with the German presidency on the rights of older people in the era of digitalization. We will have a similar conference within the framework of the current presidency of Slovenia, which will look at the aspect of intergenerational solidarity to combat ageism, but also on how to use the life cycle approach, again, to combat ageism. And again, maybe an example specifically on this public awareness comes again from Ireland. It's a simple example, but I think it shows what can be done. A new podcast, The Old Country, exploring healthy aging in Ireland, including 12 series produced by a movement of older people, Active Retirement Ireland, to look at the issues around aging, such as combating ageism, age-friendly environments, their creation, but also the added value of integrated long-term care. I will stop here, so it was just to give you in a couple of examples what can be done both at the European but also at the national level. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those really concrete examples. Very helpful, and clearly the voice of civil society is so central. So bravo for facilitating that voice and for giving us those really solid examples. And as you mentioned, Maciej, it takes the whole of society approach to address ageism. And I'm very excited to see the role of private sector in challenging stereotypes these days. So we're very happy to have with us Ms. Irina Straescu, the Executive Director of the Mold Cell Foundation in Moldova. Irina Straescu has been working in telecommunications for more than 21 years and has an extensive experience locally and internationally. Irina, if we can ask you, intergenerational strategies are one of the proven strategies that Vania from WHO presented to us earlier from the Global Report on Ageism. Can you tell us about the project that you are leading right now that contributes to improve intergenerational relations and address ageism?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Elena, and dear guests, dear participants. Thank you very much for the introduction. So Mold Cell Foundation is actually an NGO that has been created by a telco operator, Mold Cell, that back in 2015 noticed that older people actually are quite reluctant in using internet. So we did our best to present all the benefits of internet by going in the rural areas and presenting those benefits. Then this project turned into an initiative called Like from Grandparents, by which we actually urged all the teenagers to teach their grandparents on how to use internet and smartphones, because they can present lots of benefits to the older population. But when the pandemic struck the entire world back in 2020, it was the moment when online and internet helped all of us to stay connected, helped all of us to make our business using internet, to do shopping, to continue studying, because we were online. And at that moment, and there were a lot of speakers who already mentioned that it was the older population who became the most vulnerable part of the society, because they were actually not online. So this was the moment when UNFPA Moldova and Mold Cell Foundation partnered in a project called Digital Integration of Older People via Intergenerational Dialogue. Based on this project, older people who live in rural areas, who live alone in rural areas, they got free smartphones, internet, minutes, and more importantly, they actually got trainings from young volunteers, trainings on how to use internet, how to communicate with your close ones who might be living abroad, how to use public services that are already online, how to use payment services that are online, how to use social media and stay connected and make new friends and be very active. So we are really excited about this project because it brings real results. And the stereotypes that have been mentioned today for quite a number of times, that digital is not for older population, is wrong. Actually, older population enjoy being digital. This summer, me personally, and together with a team of young volunteers, we visited 15 villages of Moldova. And we made a lot of friends there among older people. And now, Natalia Munteanu, she's 84 years old. We are communicating via Facebook Messenger because she calls me video and just to ask me how I am, and then we chat, and it really is a great feeling. Number two, this project is a 100% win-win, because undoubtedly older population are learning digital skills, and this is a very good win for them. But youngsters, our young volunteers who this summer they were aged 12 and up, 12, 13, 17, they are actually getting much more because they get access to wisdom. They are getting acceptance, unconditional acceptance, and contribution to their self-esteem because they share what they know, and they share, for example, their knowledge of social media. And parents usually are not very excited about them staying so much on the social media, while older population actually appreciate this knowledge of them. So they're getting unconditional acceptance, love, and this intergenerational communication that is based on this digital literacy enhancement that we are doing. And number three that we've noticed, a very important factor, is that, very often people say the digital era is leaving older people behind the scenes. Well, no, that's wrong. Digital era and all the possibilities of digital are actually opening up the limits for the older population. Another example, we have Miss Maria, age 70, who is writing poems and sings songs. And what she's doing now, actually, she is filming those poems, making a selfie video and posting them on her social media, on her Facebook profile, so that not only her neighbors now know about her talents, but all the country knows, and not only this country, but it can go, viral all around. So it actually, digital era opens up for possibilities for everyone, regardless of their age. And this is a success indeed. And yes, I also want to mention that on October 1st, UNFPA Moldova, Mozell Foundation and other partners will be hosting a conference dedicated to the digital integration of older people based on intergenerational dialogue. And we'll be happy to talk to our civil society and other members of the society about this. And we have also launched a contest on social media with different hashtags, and you can actually follow them, like digital integration, digital abilities, where our participants, the beneficiaries of the project, are posting their photos on social media profiles. Trainings are ongoing. We are having lots of other ideas that we will be implementing, and we're really excited about this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. This is super exciting. Thank you for your passion and your commitment and this wonderful example of intergenerational communication for digital literacy. I think what you just said is so important. This digital era actually opens up the world for older populations and help them address some of the issues that we've been talking about, loneliness, social exclusion. So really great example. Last but not least, we have with us Dr. Claudia Mahler, the UN independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights by older persons. I'm sure that most of you know Claudia very well, but she started her mandate as independent expert in May 2020. She is Austrian by nationality. She's been working with the German Institute for Human Rights as a senior researcher in the field of economic, social, and cultural rights since 2010. She's also a visiting professor at the Alice Salomon Hochschule. Claudia, your report on ageism and age discrimination presented last week at the Human Rights Council really focuses on the impact of ageism on the human rights of older persons. You're also presenting a report, I understand, on gender and the rights of older women to the General Assembly next week. How does age-based discrimination intersect with gender, disability, and other forms of discrimination? Do you think that existing anti-discrimination laws address ageism enough? Over to you.
Thank you, Alana, and thank you for the warm welcome. Please allow me, first of all, to congratulate all the organizers for this meaningful and timely event. And I also want to reiterate once again that we have seen during the pandemic that existing gaps and challenges have once again magnified the violations which have been on the human rights of older persons, which have been there before. And those violations were especially because of ageism and age discrimination. So we got a lot of evidence in this regard. Therefore, from my perspective, it is really key that we have different fora, regional fora, to start a discussion how we can combat ageism and age discrimination. Once again, let me also thank you for the wonderful question, because I think ageism really amplifies all the form of discrimination and isms, which you already mentioned. You asked me also about the combination of ageism and sexism. What we have learned through or during the research of the report, which I will launch also on the 6th of October, it was postponed a little bit, is that it really has a unique and aggravated effect on ageism and inequalities. And we also learned that the combination of ageism and sexism is something really specific, which can be seen on different layers in all states, more or less, and all governments. One very positive example, because you already said I've launched or I have discussed my report last week at the Human Rights Council, was that many states and governments said quite clearly that they need to combat and to do more against ageism and age discrimination, because their laws and policies still do not focus enough on it. So I think this is a starting point when we already have a kind of assessment that we need to close the gaps. And please allow me once again to say this quite clearly. When it comes to age discrimination, we are still lacking a specific norm and a specific article on age discrimination in the international human rights framework. This is, from my perspective, one of the biggest gaps we see right now in the current human rights framework, which is also one part, I would say, why the national law, and you asked also about this, if the anti-discrimination law addresses ageism, why the national laws are not sufficient enough. We got a lot of examples today from the Ombudsman Office and also from civil society organizations where age discrimination occurs, or ageism as well. And what we have also learned is that they're not specific enough, because they only focus more or less on some parts of the life of older persons, and it is not an age discriminatory approach which is seen for all parts of the life of older persons. And let me also reiterate what I said in my launch of the report last week, that we really need to have a human rights-based approach, which is, first of all, which is also has been said before, something that we need to change the paradigm. We need to change the paradigm from older persons who are just beneficiaries of social welfare to older persons are rights holders till the end of their life. So this is something which needs to be seen very critical, that human rights don't diminish with old age. But what we see very regularly is that especially age discriminatory approaches are justified quite easily because everybody is so used to this. This is something which was also said before. We are so used to ageist approaches in ourselves and also in our communication. So I would also say, once again, to improve the situation with a human rights-based approach, we need to hear more about older persons. They need to raise their voices in a real participatory approach and meaningful participation. Older persons are the experts. What is needed? What kind of laws? What kind of policies are there? Because they have to face the gaps, and then they cannot enjoy their human rights as they should do, on the same as all the others. And what was also said before is that the stereotypes we have witnessed before COVID, but they were exacerbated through COVID, that they are a stark contrast to the active participation of all older persons, but especially of older women in the societies and communications. I think I'll stop here, and I'm really happy to look forward to next questions. And let me once again say it quite loudly, what we really need is a human rights framework which has a specific focus on older persons, which also combats and eliminates ageism and age discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And I think you said it very loudly and very clearly. It's crucial to have these multi-stakeholder conversations and move to concrete actions. Part of the work of our joint regional program, which Dr. Kluge, the regional director of WHO, spoke about, was how we are also trying to shift the narrative from older persons as beneficiaries or dependent to older persons as right holders to the end of their life, as you so eloquently mentioned. Claudia and dear panelists, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we will have time for questions. We do have a couple of comments in the chat. There was one good one about older people actually being able to teach young people technology, which we can completely agree with. What I would like to do then, because we don't have enough time, would be just to give each of you 30 seconds at this point to give a last takeaway for the audience today. Perhaps I can start with, I'll go backwards this time. Can I start with you, Claudia?
Sure, thank you so much. I think also the regional dialogue is something we have missed before. And I would like to reiterate that we are missing also on the regional level a binding treaty which focuses on older persons. So therefore, I would also say we need to strengthen the human rights of older persons. We need the paradigm shift and the participation of older persons. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. Nino?
Yes, thank you. What I wanted to say is that ageism and age discrimination affects everyone, but the older persons lack a binding international instrument that could protect them and their dignity against ageism. My office is of the firm view that a binding international instrument will provide the strongest protection for the rights of older persons, and I really do hope that the UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons will be the next major human rights treaty adopted by the United Nations. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Irina.
Yes, what struck me now is that actually everything starts from family and family values. If we foster this from family and if we, educate our kids accordingly, then there will not be such a notion as ageism. And yes, my takeaway from here would be all the population enjoy being digital, youngsters enjoy having access to their wisdom, and doing good feels really good. This is based on our product. Thank you.
Super, thank you. Maciek, over to you.
Yep. I would say, first of all, we have to keep the visibility of older people, our aspirations, specific needs, and this must be kept by the radars of the policymaking. This is even more, I would say, important right now when we are exiting the pandemic and the public interest, the interest of policymakers, for obvious reasons, in shifting into other priorities. We are rebuilding back our economies, etc. But this is not an excuse to put ageism as a phenomenon, as something which is no longer in the, as I said, in the radar of policymaking. At the end, it is the question of dignity, well-being of people of all ages, which is at stake. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maciek. Very clear messages coming so far. So finally, I'd like to pass to Vania from WHO and His Excellency the Vice Minister, if he would care to make another short statement. Vania?
Thank you, Alana. My takeaway message is basically that we all have a role to play. I think we've heard from very diverse voices and sectors in this panel today, which only goes to show that we each can do something to combat ageism. We can all challenge ageism when we see it. We can all continue this conversation. We can advocate for changes in laws and policies and for the implementation of educational activities. And of course, it's also within our hand to reach out and have bridges, build those bridges with different generations. We can all establish those relationships and foster them around us. Thank you very much for having me here, and I look forward to next steps in combating ageism in the region.
Thank you, Vania, and thank you so much. Congratulations to you for your leadership on the report as well. Really fantastic. Excellency, Mr. Vice Minister, if someone could put all the panelists at once on the frame, it would be excellent. I'm not sure if we have His Excellency with us still. Perhaps not. So we'll just move to the conclusion. I think we heard some very, very strong takeaways. We've heard a diverse number of views today. It's been a really rich session. You've given us a lot of food for thought and concrete ideas, really, for moving forward the UN Decade of Healthy Aging. I think this event shows us that it is possible to combat ageism if we work together and if we work to change the narrative around older people. So let us commit to building a society for all ages. And as Vania said, we invite you all to join the global events around the International Day of Older Persons, the campaign of ageism throughout the ages. And thank you very much to the government of Serbia again for co-hosting this regional launch, and particularly Her Excellency Minister Chomic. I would like to thank our distinguished panelists from Kazakhstan, Georgia, civil society, private sector, and the independent expert, as well as the World Health Organization. I am now going to pass back the floor to, to our moderator, our MC for closing, and then to Her Excellency Minister Chomic.
Thank you very much once again. And to close this regional discussion, we would invite the distinguished minister to share her concluding words before we move to the further discussions at national level. Thank you.
Thank you. And it was really precious what we shared and heard, and reminded me that the hardest job in politics is explaining the obvious. It's almost impossible. And you can follow what's going on with pandemic, that is very, very hard to explain the obvious to people. And ageism is more than obvious. And our job will be, again, to try to explain the obvious and to combat that people tend to be biased and put a human being in the box, if that is the old human being. There is no box. There is no box for experience, for lifetime, and for the world that human being was, is, and will be the part of. So my proposal will be to organize intergenerational dialogue between very young people and very old people as a game, time traveling. It is possible as a time travel of sharing our life experience. And that is something that maybe will make that our job, that hard job of explaining the obvious, maybe make it a little easier. And it cannot be done without United Nations, without creative people like Rada, with all of you who will not give up, because it's not a decent thing to give up in introducing human rights and combating ageism. That's kind of decency for 21st century that we want to develop and live in. Thank you.